Hi, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here. I feel like I'm going to be Vonda's sidecar, maybe sidekick for this session. I'm based here on the East Coast in Boston, and I've had the pleasure the last 25 years or so of doing a lot of work in out-of-school time settings in particular, but also in partnership with some schools in bringing trauma-informed practices and approaches and design to lots of kind of out-of-school and non-traditional climates for kids, and excited to hopefully be, a complementary perspective to the storytelling and the perspective we get to hear from Vonda.
Thanks, Lou. So we're going to jump right in because I want to get in as many questions as I can. I'd like to really take advantage of the time. So the first question is, what preventative efforts are in place to address these issues long before high school? The students get to you. And is there enough support in the place of education at this time to feel like you have a trauma-informed approach to what you're doing, Vonda?
Well, prior to COVID, I would say no, we didn't have much support for the kids because there weren't like social emotional learning counselors. But since COVID, there's been a lot of money that has been introduced into the schools, where many of the schools here now are offering intervention teachers and MTSS approach to helping the kids. And all of our schools in our district have recently hired a social emotional learning counselor. And so I'm hoping that we'll see that there'll be more supports and less need for our program eventually. Not for the next couple of years though, because there's going to be a lot of students who are just behind right now because they didn't get those supports prior.
All right, I'm going to move on to the next one then. What did happen to, and this is kind of, you touched on some things there, what happened during COVID and like when you had to switch over to virtual learning? How did the students adapt? Did that affect the results and the outcomes?
It definitely affected our results and our outcomes. Our program works well because we formulate those relationships. And it was very, very difficult to formulate personal relationships when you have 20 students and a teacher in a Zoom room. It's hard to get to know everybody's stories because obviously those kids aren't going to feel comfortable telling their stories. We administrators and counselor did our best to pull kids out of classes and meet with them individually, but even that, it's still hard to make those connections. And we saw that we had a huge drop in our graduation rate. We had a huge decrease in our attendance rate. And as a result, we are allowing in
recording in progress.
We are allowing in a lot more fifth years this year. And we're putting no judgment on the fact that they didn't finish or complete. It's not their fault, it's society, and it just is the status quo. And so we're just going to do our best with it. And so we're just going to have them stay with us until they graduate without a stigma, without a like, oh, you're a fifth year. We're not going to put that stigma on the kids. It's just everybody's here to graduate now.
And like was mentioned in the film, one of the best, factors or things that leads to students staying is the connection with an adult that cares about them. And if you cut that physical connection off, it's not as nice.
Yeah, and I think that there'll be a greater need for the next couple of years for programs like ours, because not only at our school did that connection not happen, it didn't happen in the traditional schools either. And without that kind of connection for a lot of these kids, school is irrelevant.
I think COVID highlighted for a lot of people, and I think, Vonda, you already do this, I'm sure, that like the informal time and the in-between time in any setting with kids is so important. And COVID, arrival time, like kids walking into school and the little walking by kids in the hallway and all that stuff got erased. A waiting room on Zoom doesn't really replicate that. And that time, I think for anyone who works with kids, how like it's so critical to have those little moments to reconnect, touch base, say hi, be proximal and like be close and sort of lighthearted while you also get to be serious in the classroom. All that kind of got erased during COVID. And that is, I think, so essential.
Well, and our district even made it more difficult in that they didn't require students to have their cameras on.
Right.
And so you couldn't even see the frustration, the sadness. and without that emotional connection, it's hard to respond and meet the students' needs.
Yeah, I work with one of the hospitals in Boston with a population of kids with all kinds of cardiac issues, and we run this camp every year, and the camp's been canceled for 2 years, and we did so much Zoom camp for a year. And this year we're going to see if we can do a road show and just visit every kid for 30 minutes, because at this point we're convinced that 30 minutes in their front yard of seeing one of us face to face is probably worth another 300 hours of Zoom.
Well, I spent a lot of time doing that, going out, especially when
Yeah.
we were seeing, kids who weren't showing up, just going to the homes and saying, hey, you might not know that we know this because you're in a Zoom box, but we miss you when you're gone, and we need you there. And so, just knocking on the door and standing at the, 6 feet out and saying, hey, I care. It did make a difference, but not enough of a difference.
Thank you. I'm going to jump to the next one. What do you, and this is like a two-parter here. What's the toughest aspect of a school like BlackRock, running it, working it? And then what's the most rewarding factor? And then Lou, you can apply that to the kids you work with as well.
Well, I'm going to answer them in reverse, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Because Lou and I were just talking about it, and it brings tears to my eyes. Most rewarding part is walking the hall. When those students finish and I get to walk them down the hall to pomp and circumstance, and they're getting cheered on for the first time in their lives, like they're by all of their peers, just even talking about it wells me up. There's just nothing that fills my heart and soul more. With that, and then also, we get a lot of students who come back to us later on in life that say, you guys changed my life. I have students who have come back who are now lawyers. I have students who have gotten jobs because they did their senior portfolio with us, and they had a resume and letters of recommendation. And so when you get that connection coming back, that is the creme de la creme. The hardest part, I sometimes, and this is also an emotional one, I sometimes worry that I set kids up for failure, that we make them a success in our program, and then we have to send them out into the world, and that the world isn't as accommodating and as supportive and as in touch with the social emotional needs. And I worry a lot that I wish there was a way to give them the love and the care and still prepare them for the harshness that they're going to get out in the real world sometimes.
And I follow up, if you think you didn't give them that love and that care, do you think you would have as high a success rate as you did though?
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. It's just something that I lie awake at night thinking about, that, you get these kids who come to you who are broken and broken, I guess is the best thing. And you do your best to put the pieces back together and give them that self-esteem. And then you can't protect them after they leave you. And I'm sure, Lou, I think that you see that probably with a lot of your kids too, that worry that you can't control things once they leave.
I feel like the more I've worked with children and young people, on the dark side, the hard side, it's like whatever we do, and like Vonda, you keep your kids as long as you can, and then you have to graduate them. Like they have to, or they have to move on. They can't stay forever. But not just in the US, but I feel like globally, the most vulnerable age group is often this like 16 to 25, 26 years old. Like so many, and this is this age where like, we graduate kids at 18 in most parts of the world or earlier, and then they have to like fend for themselves. And you can do all this work at pre-K, at elementary school, and we sort of protect. And then the world, by decree kind of says, you're an adult, like now you got to figure it out. And that's often when they fall apart. And
well, you see that in the movie with the one young lady who doesn't want to graduate. And I have that conversation with kids all the time. They don't want to, they're scared to go out and face the harshness of the world. And I wish that we as a society did a better support system for kids in that age group. Because it really, truly at 18, we say, you're on your own, bye-bye, good luck to you. Whereas if, many countries in the world between 18 and 20, they have automatic where they do 2 years of service,
military service, or
either military service or service in the, healthcare or the education system. And then they go out into the real world. And those 2 years of additional support, I think would make a huge difference.
Yeah, we it's not fair to say this to any program or school, because we do what we have to do and we focus on our age groups, but I wish we didn't have to graduate kids, that they could graduate when they were ready, not when the world says they have to.
Or why can't we create, and I always think this would be a great business, why can't we create a transitional program, where you have counselors and teachers that work with, freshmen at the community colleges, or people who go out into the workforce, or even kids who go into the military, and just check in on them. What can we do? And, just to provide that additional support for that age group, because I really feel that we as a society don't provide the supports that are needed to them.
That's a great idea. You should bring that to Shark Tank and see what throw some money at it. Next idea, or next question. What accountability is in place for the parents and guardians for the students at the school, and are they provided any sort of support?
Well, the accountability, we have the intake where the parents have to come in and, they have to sign that, well, parents or guardians, that they sign that they're going to be supportive of the program. But ultimately, there is no accountability that we can require of the parents. There just isn't. We do offer parent educational programs. Quite honestly, our attendance at those is not great. We have to do a lot to try to get parents just to come to meetings about their kids when we are, really concerned about the kids. We have to bribe them. We have to go get them. The kids are with us for a reason, and it's because they haven't had that family support network for the most cases. We do have the exception to that rule, but for the most part, we don't have a lot of family support, and we just move forward. We accept it with the kids. Like you see me with Jennifer saying, hey, sorry, your dad isn't going to be there for you. And you can't let that hold you back. And so we have more of those kind of conversations, because that's just our harsh reality.
Yeah, and they're in that transitional age where they're about to move past where they have to rely on that support system anyway. So they need to.
Well, when I used to be principal at the traditional high school, and I found that once again, there's another transitional period that we don't do a great job with families on, is the going into the 9th grade from middle school. The parents are always supportive of their kids up till middle school. It seems like, making sure they're doing their homework or they have what they need. But then when they get to high school, they're like, hey, you're gone, you're at the high school, take care of yourself. And particularly for the student body that I work with, that seems to be the case. Once they're at the high school, they feel like they've done their job of parenting.
Right, so the next one, maybe you don't have a great answer for this and we can move on if not, but are you a model for other schools, or are you based on a model that a bunch of other schools use?
Well, we, yes and no. We created this program over a long period of time. It started in the 1980s, and it just slowly evolved with the staff members and creating the partial credit and the move through the curriculum at your own pace and the whole system that goes with that. So with that, we are a model school for the state of California. So other continuation schools come and visit and emulate our program. I also wrote a book called Lessons from the Bad Kids, where I share the things that I've learned from the kids. And then I work with different school districts in helping them transition from a traditional program into a partial credit program, into a program that has a homeroom and an advisory, into making sure that the teachers are able to have common prep, just reworking the programs. So we didn't model ourselves on anything. We evolved over a 30-year time period, going into 40 years now. Oh my gosh. We now go out and try to help other school districts.
Hey, Vonda, can I ask a follow-on to that?
Yeah.
I find, so I do mostly work in out of school time settings. And one of the differences I find is that you have lots of people in the out of school time setting who can be sort of change agents or stakeholders, but in a school, everything hinges on the principal. And how do you help a principal make their sort of emotional, mental transition to sort of a different way of working? Or is it the principals have already sort of bought in and they come to you saying, we're ready? Because without that principal support for teachers and the structure and the changing schedules, it's just everything, you know, you can have the most trauma-informed teacher in the world, but if the principal's not kind of driving it, it doesn't really fly.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, when a school district contacts me to do consulting with them, the first thing I request is a meeting with the principal before I agree to consult for them and see, I test the waters as to where the principal is. Are they ready for the change? Do they want me involved? Is this being forced upon them? Yep. Because if we don't feel a connection with each other and they aren't on board, I don't take those positions, because it's not going to see the change that needs to take place. Because when you start initially, it's a upheaval. I'm in one school district right now where the union is fighting against the teachers at this school, because I'm suggesting that the teachers get an hour common prep time and that the students leave earlier. And the other teachers are like, that's not fair. And so I'm having to, I mean, the principal has to be all in, because it can get ugly to try to transition over to a program like ours.
I want to ask a follow-up as well. We don't have to get in the weeds on this. We can keep it short. Where does the funding come from for these schools?
Well, the state of California, and I believe federally, every school district has to have a continuation school or an alternative program. So we're funded by public schools. Our district funds us a little better because they give us low class sizes. They understand our program will not work with large class sizes. So they are committed to that we have no more than 19 in a class at a time. And they also keep us relatively small as far as a school goes. We don't have any more than 140 at a time. But with that, we've got, they support us in that there is a waiting list to come in. And they let us work with the schools in doing the intake process.
So
it is a little bit more expensive because we have the smaller class size, but it is out of district funds.
My next question, I'm sure you don't get through a Q&A without being asked this question. What's going on with Joey now?
What are the kids doing?
Yeah.
Well, would you like the whole list of the kids?
Yeah, I would love it. Yeah, we only got submitted a question about Joey, okay. But I'd like.
Yeah, tell us all.
Okay, so Jennifer, because when the movie was out and about, somebody saw her and saw something special in her, and they gave her a free ride scholarship to nursing school, and she has graduated from nursing school and is currently taking her nursing exams. And we'll keep our fingers crossed and say several prayers. Because she has test anxiety, but we'll get her through. And Lee and Layla. Layla has graduated from community college and is now in a 4-year program at the Cal State system. Lee and Layla are still together. And Lee graduated from the adult program at the community college and is now in the community college and is working at our local grocery store. AJ graduated from musical engineering school, and he is taking off with music. He worked with Joey on the soundtrack for the documentary. He does his music under Mike Craftsman, and they have been hot in LA now, hitting the clubs and doing very well with all of their music. And also he runs in Joshua Tree, which has become the hipster place to go, I guess. And he is running a music studio there where he records for pretty big artists now. So he's done very well. Joey went through treatment 2 times. The first time was not successful, and the second time was. Fingers crossed, prayers. Lou and Keith paid for his treatment. They're the people who made the documentary. He is now currently working out at the military base in 29 Palms. clean and sober, doing well. We can't get him to go back to school yet. We're still working on that one. And he still works with AJ on doing some music. So knock on wood, my kiddos are doing okay.
Yeah. And maybe I missed this in the film. When was the film completed? Like what?
5 years ago.
5 years. Okay, so it's 5 years since. Okay, great.
Yes.
And this next question, I'd like both of you to weigh in, and you can give me one answer or three, as long as you want to talk on this one. I'd love to hear it. What recommendations do you have for new professionals, counselors, teachers, social workers entering the field and working with children like these?
I'll let you start first, Lucas.
So I think one is, the harsh reality that the systems are really complicated, and a lot of great, caring, compassionate people get spit out of these systems all the time because you put your heart and soul into it, and what's around you just is sometimes not supportive, sometimes not there. And so appreciating that you're always part of a system, and that reality I think is important to look at. The other reality is that what a young person brings to their experience is this whole story that they have, and their story is complicated, and their story impacts you, and you have your own regulation system that can get really disrupted by them. And the kids that have the hardest stories often unintentionally push away the adults that need them the most, and those adults get a little more hardened, and you feel yourself kind of coming to school going, okay, it's there's Lou again, like I got to get ready for Lou. And that starts this, I think, tragic distancing that happens between the young person who's doing the best they can and the adult who has to kind of pull back. And so it's not necessarily taking care of yourself, because I think that's not really fair to say, because I think it's more complicated than that, but understanding how a young person who has a challenging story can challenge you, and sort of dialing into that, I think really matters, to kind of pay attention to when you feel distant and how you keep bringing the love, because that's the kid who needs you the most. And you have to pace yourself sometimes with that. And that I think has a lot to do with peer support. Like, who else is out there thinking like you do and strategizing? And there's so much, Vonda, and you and I were talking about this earlier, like there's so much unorthodox creativity to working with a young person with a complicated story, that you can read every book, you can go to every training, go to every class, you can practice every methodology, and then you have this young person in front of you, and you have to be willing to keep them safe, follow guidelines that allow for the right rules to be followed, but then be creative and be willing to try things that will work for this young person and may not work for anyone else. But if it works for them, then you're getting a good outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was jotting some notes down as you were talking, Lou, and you and I are definitely of the same mindset. I would say that first and foremost is that they need to find a support network, a mentor, someone they can go to vent to cry to brainstorm with. And then Lou and I were talking earlier about how do I keep teachers, and they need to fill their own cup. They need to know when to shut it off and to walk away, so that they can, go out and leave the work behind and go live a life and come back. And to then on the other side, to be authentic when they're with the kids, to be in the moment, to not be distracted, to not get sidetracked by regulations or, the phone ringing or the computer, whatever, to be authentic, be in the moment with those kids, so that the kids know that you will always be there for them when they need you. And then as Lou said, the kids who need the most love will show it in the most unloving of ways. And so they can't take things personally. You have to remember, they're not angry at you. They're angry at the world. They're angry at their life. They're angry at their past experiences. So when they are lashing out at you, I always would take that kind of as a compliment, that they felt safe with me, that they could lash out and know that I would still be there, that I would still love them. And on that note, not to be shy in saying, I care about you, and I know we have to judge people's, personal safety and how they feel, but I am a hugger, and I always ask, can I hug? But, making that connection, I just think that, showing that I am there for them and I'm willing to be real and authentic, and I'll cry with them and I may cuss every now and then with them. But to just be authentic and be in the moment. And then lastly, to remember that I had, when I first started, I actually started out here when I was 20 years old. And I thought I could save them all. I could fix them all. I could take them all home with me. And I had a girl who had been kicked out of her house, and I wanted to bring her to my home. And my principal called me in and said, look, you're going to do your best to help all these kids, but you cannot fix all their problems. And if you tried to put that burden on your shoulder, you will weigh yourself down and you will burn yourself out and you will be of no use to anybody. And I think that's a harsh lesson for young people to learn. And if they can learn that they can make a positive difference without solving all the problems, that we'll see them be able to stay in the career longer.
There's I feel like there's a secret power in the movie that doesn't fully get explained, but is there, which is what it looks like you do for your staff. Because like the burnout potential in these roles is so high, and every year that a staff member in your kind of school stays, they like amplify their impact dramatically because they get to know the system and the kids. And I think that what you talk about with giving more time to teachers and time for themselves and helping them get home to take breaks, like it's everything. And it's in there. You can see it in little pockets of what the movie shows and the couple of meetings that you have. But I actually think it's probably a huge piece of what your success is about. And it's rare. It's so rare.
You and I were talking about this at the beginning. And when I work with principals, one of the things I say to them is you need to make sure that you are doing handwritten notes to your staff saying, I see you, I recognize you, I appreciate you, that you know what's going on in your staff members' lives. I will go up to a staff member and I'll say, look, you need to take a personal day tomorrow. You need to go out, you need to go play, you need to go, take care of your life, whatever. I'll cover your class, or I'll go in and I'll say, hey, leave an hour early today. I'll come and cover the last hour, go for lunch. Because we do need to go in as administrators and protect our educators who are in the front lines every day, in the trenches. It's amazing what just a little candy, I feed them. I make cookies and bars and bring to staff meetings. Yeah, that's another story. Anyway, so those kind of little things go a long way.
Yeah, speaking to that point, I used to do therapeutic staff support with kids in schools like this, and I would get really burnt out, and the agency I worked for would take advantage and push me to do more, and I could only do it for about a year and a half, and I just burned out, and it was like,
we're seeing that. Well, look at the headlines. We're losing educators constantly.
Yeah.
And the reason we're losing them is because we're not taking care of them. I think you can give somebody hundreds of thousands of dollars, and if you don't treat them well and take care of them and take care of their social emotional side, you're going to lose them. Because it's especially educators, because money is not, I'm not, of course, we want to have be paid well. But we also, as administrators, really, truly need to take care of our people, or we will lose them.
One question we have here is, do you do anything to support the students that may end up homeless, or is there any way you can intervene? Or
well, yeah, and yes and no. We have a homeless coordinator in the district that I bring in, and he works with us. Does a lot. We try to bring him in before the students are home, where like if they're, we know they're having problems with their rent, they're behind, that they're going to be evicted, that they don't have their utility bills paid, that kind of thing we're able to help with. Once the students are actually homeless, it's very difficult in our area. The nearest homeless shelter is 80 miles from us. And so I work closely with that homeless shelter, but it's difficult to get people in there. But the problem is when I get them into that homeless shelter, then I lose them. They're not my student anymore. And so when it gets to that point in time, it's a big commitment from the student, and it's a big loss for me and the staff. So we do our best to try a lot of couch surfing and a lot of taking care of our neighbor. I mean, that's the harsh reality of it.
I think that for any individual, but for any program too, it's this idea of, do you know every service and support available in your community, so that you in a moment's notice you can say, well, and do you know their quality, and can you make the handoff, right? It's one thing to know there's a service, but some services are really not well matched for certain kids or families, and they won't, it could be a block away, and that block could be 10 miles because they won't go themselves. But are you able to make the referral? Do you trust the referral? Do you know someone there by name? And can you get them there? Can you walk, drive, make sure that it happens, so that then they get the support as well? And that, I think, is a huge resource that most programs and schools don't always have, is, do we know everything potentially available for our kids if they need it, so we're ready?
Well, our district does a really great thing. They have a resource manual that our special education department puts together every year and updates every year. And then they do a lot of connections with us, with the local agencies, so that we do get to know who's in each agency. And we do have a contact person. But with that, once again, you have to get the kids to be willing to go. We do our best to bring in the organizations and the agencies. In fact, you see in the documentary several of the different groups that we bring in, because we find that the kids are better off working with them and talking in their own comfort area, their own environment, rather than us bringing them to somewhere else. And especially like with the homeless situation, you know, a lot of our kids would rather stay homeless than to have to go 80 miles away, because that's very scary to them, and they don't know anybody, they don't know anything. And so they just say, you know, Miss V, I'd rather stay here and couch surf than go to a home.
But that also raises like a great redefinition of home. Home is a physical place. Home is where your people are. And if you've got 5 friends that you can stay with, and like, that's homeless by state definitions, but that's a child who's created home for themselves that is safer probably, and better than, well, for them at the moment, better than what a service that may be offered.
Absolutely. And we do things like, you know, do a backpack of food for the weekend, you know, so that, and a lot of times if I can facilitate a kid staying at somebody else's house, I will do that. And, you know, talk to the parent and get them some gift cards to Walmart to pay for the groceries, so that it's not another burden on that family where they're couch surfing. So it's that kind of thing. We do a lot of, you know, donation raising to get gift cards to fast food restaurants, the grocery store, Walmart, so that we can do that kind of.
We only have about 2 minutes left. I'd like to get 2 more quick questions in if we possibly can. The first one is, are you there? Oh, it looks like you froze for a second. All right, you're back.
Okay.
What is your self-care routine? How do you, the amount of stress you have on you, I can't imagine that. Like, what do you do to
Well, you see it in the documentary. I exercise because that lets out your frustration and your anger. I'm a hiker, and there's nothing that feeds the soul more than getting out into nature. I also have the most supportive husband in the entire world. I can pick up the phone and say, I need tennis shoes, get to Walmart, you know. This kid doesn't have any shoes right now. And he drops whatever he's doing and he gets to Walmart and gets me the tennis shoes for the kids. He does all our so I have a good support network. And then the teachers feed my soul. You know, and the kids, it just all works that way. And I also, when I was telling you earlier, an hour after school ends, I go and I kick the staff out and I leave. You know, you know what, the work will be there tomorrow. The paperwork, I go in at like 4 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, do the paperwork, it's out of the way. And then I leave at the end of the day and go live my life.
Is there a way that people, if they want to donate to the school for gift cards or whatever, is there a way people can follow up with you to do that?
Absolutely. I will put my email in the chat room, and also there is a GoFundMe. Well, I'm not sure if the GoFundMe page is still active because they just recently, during COVID, it might not be. But there's also things can be sent directly to the school, and I can put the school address into.
Great. And then the last one, a little fun one. Is there a way people can listen to Joey's music? Is there that exists?
Well, it does under Mike Craftsman on YouTube. He's got a YouTube
Channel?
Yeah, channel. That's all above me. But yeah, Mike Craftsman is where you'll hear their music.
Cool. All right, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the movie. I hope everybody else did.
Thank you all for all that you do for kids. Keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you. And I'll give both of you an opportunity to make a closing statement, something you want to leave everybody with. You both have an opportunity.
As I said, just keep doing your best. There's no right or wrong answer. We just, be authentic and do your best for kids, and you can't go wrong.
It's a privilege to sit next to you, Vonda, virtually. So I'll save the last word about you, which is it's just wonderful to see your work. And it's been a great pleasure to get to listen to you and be kind of on this with you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.